going to begin by reading a poem. This is called Swallow Twice. Given the smallest prompt, Father will describe how I skulked just beyond the lamplight's reach, watching the ring of men, ripe with beer and laughter, push thick fingers into the mountain of spiced meat, roasted with ginger, onion, and chilies, like an altar I fought to worship at, swiping through their arms at the chunks, a mouse attempting to feast with kings. Frustrated, Father stopped their rapid speech so I could reach in, greedily choose the choicest piece, ignore his warnings and tear at the muscle, strain against the flesh, till its elasticity slipped my fingers and the chunk chilies and all slapped into my eyes. Father thumped my back as I coughed on the pepper. Swallow twice, he urged, dropping the wailing mess of me on my mother's knees. What Father didn't know is I imagined the key to the impenetrable talk lay in the cubed meat, and I longed to be like them. In the circle of friends I have, most of our conversations revolve around music, the heft and sway of the changing world, the rapid rate of our redundance, how best to pretend we know it all. And when beer loosens what inhibitions are left after shredding meat with bare fingers, laughter cloaks our weaknesses, our inability to provide for those we love who love us. We who still know nothing of what our lovers want. How frightening it is to have nephews growing up who want to be like us, who want to be like men. Thank you. Cool. So, this is a picture of my nephew, Malachi. And he's a little bit over 3 years old. And the best thing Malachi loves about going to church on Sundays is leaving church on Sundays. He likes to play in the small parks and playgrounds close by, and this is expected of little boys, I think, to be courageous, to go where the wind blows. One Sunday after church, I tell Malachi it's time to go back, that his mother, my twin sister, who I first met when we were wet sparks inside my own mother, is waiting. Malachi's small shoulders sag a little bit, but we go. On the way, on the road, there's a little bush of flowers growing, and Malachi runs ahead of me, plucks a flower, and stands there, breathing the fragrance into himself. This isn't typical of boys, I say. This year is unusual. This isn't normal. Further up, there are a group of other boys, 5 or 6 of them, 10, 12-year-olds, bigger, towering over Malachi. And I expect him to be frightened and to run towards me, but Malachi runs towards them and blocks their path. Kind of like Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, stopping the Balrog, "You shall not pass." Malachi lifts the small flower in his fists up and says, "Smell." Right. And these boys look at me baffled, and I shrug. I don't know. They look at each other confused. And incredibly enough, they form this orderly line, and one after each other bend to smell Malachi's flower before going. And for the rest of the day is all I can think about. Like, wait, what just happened? Like, wait, what? And I came up with an explanation. Malachi combined something expected of boys to be courageous with something unexpected to pluck flowers. And these two things met when he stopped these older boys he had never met before and demanded they acknowledge something delicate and beautiful. Malachi did something else. He reminded me of myself. I was born to a Muslim father and a Christian mother in Nigeria on the 23rd of October 1984. This means I'm Libra and Scorpio. I have a twin sister, so one could say before I was conscious that I existed, I was very close to feminine energy. I have 3 sisters in total, and what it meant to be a good brother was to play with my sisters, which meant dolls, makeup, skipping, and sewing Barbie and Cindy doll dresses. I made Barbie the sexiest crimson evening dress. Had the slit coming all the way up her thigh. It was bad. All this meant that age 10, not only was I unafraid of being vulnerable or emotional, traits usually associated with femininity, it also meant that a lot of things boys were typically into, I just wasn't bothered with. We left Nigeria, came to England, and after 3 years moved to Ireland, to Dublin. And when I started schooling there, I was the only black boy in the entire school. The racism of those years were exhausting but character building, and I had a tight group of friends. One of them was a guy called Stephen, and Stephen used to call me Sheikh El Spear. He thought I'd be a writer well before I ever considered it. Unfortunately, Stephen was going through some sort of a depression which he felt unable to talk to us, his friends, about, or his family, or his girlfriend. And in my penultimate year in Dublin, Stephen took his own life. He was gone. I returned to London. I was 18 years old and I was a little bit of a wreck. I was this Muslim, Christian, Libra, Scorpio, Irish, English, Nigerian, skinny black immigrant ball of angst. And surprise, surprise, I started writing poetry. I'm a poet and a playwright. It is my profession. It is what I do. But I was very lucky to find a community of poets who took me in and helped me define my very self. Poetry was the last thing my parents wanted for their only son, but perhaps they thought that I needed to breathe, so they let me be. I know this isn't the case for many people, this isn't the case for many men, for black men specifically, and I wanted to do something, I wanted to help. In 2009, a friend told me of a project targeted at black and Afro-Caribbean barbershops to teach barbers the very basics in counseling so they would know how to spot and handle mental health issues that might come out in conversation. And the idea blew my little Irish mind. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and I wanted to be attached to the project for 3 reasons. One, because money had been tight at home, and I'd taken to cutting my hair myself. I knew very little about barbershops. So if I was attached to the project, I'd have to spend time with a group of men I was no longer familiar with, and specifically with black men. Two, as a poet, as a professional voyeur, it would have been incredible material. Are you kidding me? Just taking notes. And three, I thought spending time with men speaking so intimately about their emotions or feelings might help me understand what my friend had been going through, what Stephen had done. But unfortunately, the project didn't get funding, so it didn't happen. But the idea stayed with me. And 4 years later, I set out to write a play called Barbershop Chronicles by interviewing barbers and their clients. But in typical Nigerian fashion, I wanted to go bigger. So I left my neighborhood, left London, left England, left Great Britain completely and traveled to South Africa, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, and Ghana. I spent time with men in barbershops, and I found the most intimate of conversations. In Uganda, I met a man who didn't believe in love. Or rather, he didn't believe in romantic love, he believed in godly love. And for him, that meant working for refugees, for the homeless, for young people, for orphans. That he believed in. Romantic love, he didn't trust it. He thought it clouded judgment. He had a wife, he had 2 kids that he cared about them passionately, he adored them. His wife, he paid something like 60 cows, which is quite a lot of money, right? But he didn't love her romantically, he didn't trust himself. He thought that would be the undoing of his relationship. And he couldn't talk to her about this. In Kenya, I met a businessman who was terrified of new laws the government were making to Kenyan society, where young people and women would be awarded 30% of new contracts. He thought this would completely destabilize Kenyan society. His wife would get one of these contracts, she'd run around Nairobi with new ideas, and he would lose his standing in his family. He was terrified of this. We talked for 4 solid hours and he didn't want to go home. He couldn't speak about this to her. In London, I met an actor who had just returned from an audition and he said he wouldn't get the part. We asked him what the part was and he said, strong black man. And we told him, I think you're kind of overqualified for this. But he refused and said, no, that he didn't think he clicked their box for strong black masculinity. So we asked him, what's your definition? And he said he didn't have one. And we thought, yeah, that's your problem. And he said, no, 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 no. He didn't grow up with his father or his uncles. There were no role models around him, just women. He talked about his job. He plays characters between the ages of 15 and 25. And to play these characters, he needs to stay slim. Therefore, he can't bulk up like one of the stereotypes of masculinity. He talked about going to the gym to stay lean, surrounded by men lifting weights, pumping iron, asking themselves, do I look like a man yet? When he felt they should be asking, who am I? I asked him if he spoke about this to his friends. He said no, they just want to talk about football. I asked him, have you tried harder? He said yes, they just tell me to man up. I asked him, do you speak with your girlfriend about this? He said no, 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 no. He doesn't want his girlfriend to think he doesn't know who he is. I asked him also, how does this make you feel? He said that to him, being a man is to not be yourself. And he felt completely isolated all around. Overall, I discovered that there was a paradigm shift in the perception of masculinity, and a lot of the men I spoke and listened to did not know how to handle it, to talk about it. Here's the thing about barbershops. When you're sat in a barber's chair, wrapped in the barber's cloth, cocooned in it, almost baby-like, returned to your earliest self, and there's a man inches from your neck with a blade. It is a place of delicacy, of gentleness, of absolute trust. And it's no wonder men open up. And the reasons for the project here were just as alive on the African continent as they are here. Counseling is needed. According to the Samaritans, the mental health charity, lots of men suffer in silence. In 2014, 3.5 times more men than women committed suicide. And rates have been steadily increasing since 2001. Despite this, women are still more likely than men to seek professional help. Dr. Joyce Benenson, a psychology professor and a researcher who carries out research into why this is, discovered that boys as young as 3, as young as Malachi, my nephew, are just more stubborn than girls. She thinks this is because of biological differences as well as society's demand for the strong, resolute, macho man. According to her, women are biologically wired to take better care. Women seek help. Men die. The organization Black Mental Health UK discovered that black men in Britain are 17 times more likely than white men to be diagnosed with a psychotic illness. 17 times. Why is this? One can only guess. Research studies by research teams and hospitals in the US suggest that memory and physical trauma can be passed genetically from parent to child. And for decades, Dr. DeDrury has theorized on post-traumatic slave syndrome, where descendants of slaves can display inherited hopelessness and despair. In movies, on television shows, in news programs, magazines, etc., more often than not, black people are depicted as negative, dangerous, untrustworthy individuals. And the effect of this, how we relate to ourselves and each other, are immeasurable. For socioeconomic reasons, black men do not in large numbers go to sporting events, the most popular place where men gather to show strong emotions. And even then, these emotions are generated from external sources rather than eternal ones. For similar reasons, black men do not go to clubs or pubs to relax and talk. Seeking safe space is one of the many pressures weighing on marginal communities, and barbershops are those places. They are meeting places, they are stadiums, they are news outlets, and most importantly, they are places for rudimentary counseling. Given the rise in gender equality and the changing nature of masculinity, it is critical, I think, for men to start talking, for black men specifically, and for those conversations to leave the barbershops, to talk with our friends, our family, our colleagues, and most importantly, to seek help where needed. Because when we are born, we're more likely to be like Malachi than not. We're just as likely to pluck flowers as we are to clench fists. And we need to create a world where this isn't surprising, where this isn't even commendable, where this is simply the norm. Thank you.